Would you like to reach our film and TV review podcast audience? Do you have a product or service of interest to film and TV home consumers or followers of the entertainment industry? Have a film or show production to publicize? For affordable price plans for all budgets, get in touch and find out about our introductory advertising options. Reach our audience of film and TV viewers and visit our site contact page at filmandtvreview.com, or you can email us at business@filmandtvreview.com. Reach out today. Welcome to filmandtvreview.com. Catch the latest film, TV and streamed show reviews every week. The views and opinions expressed by the authors and those providing comments are theirs alone. They do not reflect the views, opinions or position of filmandtvreview.com or their respective parent companies or affiliates. Filmandtvreview.com makes no representations as to accuracy, completeness, correctness, suitability, or validity of any information in this program and is for entertainment purposes only. Episodes may contain adult humor and language. For full terms and conditions, see filmandtvreview.com.
Hello there, and welcome to our first edition of 2025 of Film and TV Review. I'm joined by my regular hosts, Richard, James, Andrew, Alfonso, and a lot of titles that have come out already over this seasonal period and in January. So I think right out of the gates, I think a title that hit New Year's Day, yeah, I think, was Nosferatu, the remake of the Count Orlok story, the vampire story. I think German, I think originally came out as a version, and then another one in the 70s, I think. But Alfonso, James, you saw Nosferatu. What did we think? Very atmospheric film. I saw the cinema. I quite enjoyed it, visually anyway. But what did you think then?
Yeah, so you said about the versions. I whenever there's a remake, I try and watch some of the originals, if either rewatch or watch for the first time some of the originals. And I had seen the original Nosferatu from 1922. It's quite visually striking film, and a lot of people will probably visually know what that looks like. But obviously, there's numerous versions of Dracula over the years. This is Robert Eggers, who did The Witch, The Lighthouse, and The Northman, all of which I think are really, really great films. Particularly the first two, I think, are really, really great. And this, I thought it was, having watched a couple of different Dracula takes. So I watched which this is based on. For those who don't know, the original 1922 was a sort of a German retelling of Dracula for a German audience, but they didn't expect it to go quite as to get picked up internationally. And when it comes to the attention of Bram Stoker's widow, she took them to court for copyright, and every copy of the original movie was meant to have been destroyed. Thankfully, it wasn't, and versions still exist. And both the 1922 film and the Bram Stoker novel are cited in the credits as source material for this. But sometimes when you rewatch some original takes, I watched the 1930s Universal Monsters Dracula and the Bram Stoker's Dracula from 1992, which is Francis Ford Coppola of the Godfather fame. Sometimes when you do that, you end up going, oh, there's a lot of repetition here and there's nothing maybe new or unique. I thought there was quite a lot. I mean, certainly visually, certainly Nosferatu himself in the depiction of it, and obviously the fact that it's been over 100 years since the last actual Nosferatu. There's a lot of differences there anyway, and it felt quite unique. the 1992 film is a bit of a sort of romp. It's quite fun. This is kind of fun, but like in a dark Robert Eggers way. It feels like Robert Eggers has put his stamp on it. Um, the use or subdued use of color, the sort of limited color palette really works very well. There's some amazing like there's an amazing sequence involving some contortion that's going on with one of the characters, which it sort of made me stop and go, "How the hell have they done that?" Um, and it's really sort of good visually. I think if I was ranking all of Robert Eggers' films, I mean, something's got to come last, right? And it's maybe that thing that because this is based on an existing story, there's a bit of familiarity there, which sometimes with horror, not having familiarity is good because it kind of really takes you by surprise. But I'm being very picky there. It's a very, very enjoyable movie. I don't know anybody who's seen it and not particularly liked it. Maybe Alfonso's about to say that he didn't like it, but um, yeah, I thought it was a really good. It's really good to see a film as good as this. I think getting the sort of attention it deserves, and it seems to have been quite popular commercially as well.
Sure. Yeah, I'm actually agree with those points. I did get a recommendation to go see it at the cinema, and I thought, oh, maybe I should wait. But I'm glad I did go to see the cinema because visually it looks really great. I know it's the muted colors and all that, but I did feel like you say it was a familiar territory. So maybe the previous Roger, his previous movies, especially The Witch, you just don't know where it's going to go. So you're more unnerved. But here, it did remind me of, Bram Stoker's Dracula. So, those kind of visual. It almost, if you've seen that, it almost spoiled this a bit. As in, yes, it's the same tone, and we have been here before, and so it feels like, okay, are you going through the paces? But I mean, if you haven't seen Bram Stoker's Dracula, it's quite a nice introduction to that story. Anyway, Alfonso, if you're back with us, you any?
Yes. Um, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Well, yeah, I liked the film while I was watching it. I was a little bit, I don't know, I didn't like very much the pace because I already knew the story, and that ladies' man Nosferatu never seemed to arrive to the town, and everybody, oh, the Lily Rose, that was all the time like he's coming, he's coming. He was never there. I think at the end he eventually comes, and it's interesting because I say ladies man because he's like has such a power of attraction with this woman, and well, I don't want to spoil his looks, but I mean, I don't know.
You
in
don't like
in
beards then?
in Dracula, Bram Stoker's Dracula, he looks like Gary Oldman, kind of nicely dressed. Here, it's another story. He's kind of like a man who sleeps where he sleeps, and it's a little bit decrepit. But I mean, yeah, why not? Why not? Everyone has their own preferences, and so you know. Um, but yeah, I mean, visually, as you have said, it's quite a treat. And story-wise, it's nah, not so much. And but it was like something that I don't I enjoyed it while I was watching it. So
Fair enough. Fine. Well, another, I guess, a remake, a kind of like horror classic figure is Wolfman. Again, I'm guessing this is the werewolf story, the traditional one, classic one. We've had a few remakes over the time, um, throughout the decades. You, James, Alfonso, you both saw this as well. How does this pair up? Was this worth a remake?
Yeah, so I didn't revisit the Universal Monsters version of this despite have owning it, and so I just went to see this. It's from Blumhouse and it's from Lee Wannell, I think is how you. I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce the name, but directed the 2020 remake of The Invisible Man, which was one of my favorite films of 2020. But you may remember there weren't too many films come out in 2020. But that said, I went to see the Blumhouse one, Invisible Man, with no expectation of it. The last thing we had from Universal Monsters was the Dark Universe, so I had very low expectations, and come out of the Invisible Man going, oh my god, they found something really interesting to do with that, a really good remake, because the one in the 30s was obviously the idea of having an Invisible Man was cutting edge special effects back then. It wouldn't cut that in 2020 to just have a scarf floating about and pretending there's an Invisible Man. So they really went back to what is scary about an Invisible Man. Well, it's if you're being watched, and they then sort of frame this from the woman's perspective of an abusive partner and things, and they really sort of tapped into that and found a way to modernize it. So they've done Wolfman. It's very difficult to find a sort of update to what is scary about a wolfman, because the idea of a wolfman is just scary because he's a wolfman and he's trying to eat you. So it's fun. It's sort of okay, this, but I think because my expectations were quite high for this after the Invisible Man, I didn't. I thought it was an honourable attempt to do something new and to update it, and they really go with a family sort of story here. And actually, I will say the prosthetic work with the transformation, which is actually quite slow. You think of the very memorable transformation scene in An American Werewolf in London, but here it's very slow over a long period of time, really, over many scenes. And each scene, you're kind of going, "Oh my god, they've done something extra there. It's starting to look more gross." And there were a few really good gross moments that might not be for Richard, but when I listened to them when I was in the cinema, they were getting audible gasps, and someone sort of like made a ugh noise. So it's really like, if you're a horror fan, it kind of does the gore quite well. But I felt there was something a bit lacking in it. But it's not a sort of don't watch. I think it's sort of like maybe wait for it on streaming. But I felt a little bit disappointed by it. But and I would say I think it's got the actress Julia Garner, who is in a film called The Royal Hotel, which is one of the tensest films I've seen this decade so far. But yeah, so that's Wolfman. But I don't know what Alfonso thought. He may have liked it a bit more than me.
No, on the contrary, I didn't like it. Like I don't know what maybe because my expectations were high, but no, I thought it was kind of very average. The story was quite simple. The transformation was only halfway there for me, like literally. He even seemed like a distant cousin of Nosferatu. They both have middle-age problems, so some sort. This wasn't your all-powerful Wolfman. It was like more like, I don't know, like a man that is suffering all the time. And he kind of attacks, kind of is there. It's like a disease. I don't know. There's not a real kind of metaphor that you can point to. Nah, everything is halfway there. Even the transformation for me was halfway there. So some ideas that might be better might have been better executed in another version. I don't know. It just was like a waste of time for me. I mean, yeah.
Okay.
There's a funny thing about just to link actually the two first stories of the day. Huh? I just realized actually that Robert Eggers, who did Nosferatu, his next project is going to be released in Christmas 2026, is a movie called Werewolf.
No, but
and I don't know if it's also another attempt at a Wolfman story, etc. But it's just funny actually that the same guy who did Nosferatu is the guy actually. Anyway,
we were saying the Blumhouse or Richard, I will give you the credit, said the Blumhouse Invisible Man and Wolfman should be called the Darker Universe, which is fantastic. And Richard has now been hired by Universal to do their marketing.
Indeed, to try to sell this thing, because it failed first time.
Maybe Robert Eggers is going to do the even darker universe.
Darker universe. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Plenty to look forward to. Thank you. Right, from Wolfman to a chimp man, I suppose. In the film Better Man, and this is I suppose, a biography almost, a light-hearted one of Robbie Williams. For people outside UK, you'll be thinking who, and rightly so, maybe. But James, why don't you throw some light in?
For the
what
record, this
Better
guy is
Man?
very famous in France.
And in
Well,
Spain.
you're
I think in
lucky.
Europe, but not in the
And Europe,
States. Basically.
yeah, but the state, yeah, well, lucky them. Well, James, if those more who are not familiar with Robbie Williams, just give us what Better Man is about.
Yeah, so Better Man, the story of Robbie Williams, used to be a member of the boy band Take That in the early 90s, then went solo and was one of the, probably in the UK, like the biggest solo recording artist of the late 90s, early noughties. Like he was absolutely huge. And they've come up with a biopic idea, which to make it stand out from the million other pop biopics that we've talked about many times on this podcast. The idea in the trailer is that he'll be played by a CGI chimpanzee, sort of escapology of the Planet of the Apes, and the idea is that he's always felt less evolved than his peers. And when you do see the trailer, you think that is an insane idea. And I've actually seen this film twice now. And on the second time, I started laughing to myself because I was like, the first time I never thought about the fact it was a monkey. So he's portrayed by this really good, it's really good CG effects. This CG monkey, and I think you're just involved in the story. There's a lot of light-hearted stuff. You're right, Jason, but there's actually a lot of dark sort of stuff in this, which a lot of pop biopics we've talked about in the past, they're very muted. Maybe there are certain ones that aren't, like Rocket Man, like Tina Turner, What's Love Got to Do with It? But a lot of them fall into this trap of we want to keep all the controversial stuff down. We don't want to be critical of the artist, all this sort of stuff. This really goes into a lot of his sort of addiction issues, mental health issues. But it's got a lot of the songs in there and stuff as well. And it's just a very entertaining movie, and it's got two sequences in it that really sort of grab me emotionally. And it, I think it's a really surprising film. We've said before, and I do agree with you, Richard, when you say not everybody deserves a biopic, and this is a bit of a tendency now, they give everybody a biopic. But I think in this case, and the film seems to have struggled particularly to find, just to get people in the door in America, understandably, because people don't know who Robbie Williams is. And maybe there's also other competition from the biopic. We're going to talk about another music biopic, but also from musicals in general, with Wicked doing so well. But although this hasn't got numbers through the door, I don't know anybody who's seen this really and gone, didn't like it. Everyone's actually gone, oh, I didn't expect that to be that good. And it's a really, I think that's just really in the frankness of it. And it's sort of quite funny, and it's just quite a good story. Is he as iconic as Bob Dylan? Absolutely not. But and I'm sure he would say he's not as well. But it's a very well done, entertaining biopic, and you wouldn't think the CG work, the idea of having a chimp would make the story work, but for some reason it does, and I can't quite put my finger on that why it does. And it's also up for a single Oscar, but an Oscar nomination for best visual effects work. If it loses to Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, then I do feel sorry for this movie because they've literally just looked at it and gone, that's got more monkeys in it. So we'll give the CG, we'll give the Oscar for effects to that. But yeah, I think it's one of those films. People are going to catch this on streaming and when it's on TV and go, oh, that was really good. But it's still in cinemas a little bit over here in the UK, and it actually come out on Boxing Day over here. But I know it hasn't done particularly well in the US. I don't know what it's been like in Europe and things. But I think it's a really entertaining film. And Steve Pemberton, who is known from The League of Gentlemen, is a comic actor, is a really good straight actor as well. He's underrated, I think, as a straight actor. He plays his dad in this. But yeah, that's Better Man.
Yes, yeah. Didn't do really. Yeah, it did make some headlines because it just didn't do that well. But yeah, maybe it is better suited for TV, with the family, and just like watching during the holiday time. But anyway, thanks for that. Fine. Well, from that biopic of a musician to another one. Yeah, as James mentioned, and that's the Bob Dylan biopic with Timothy Chalamet, if I pronounce that right. Richard,
No.
don't tell me.
Chalamet. I've got this right now. Chalamet,
Chalamet.
isn't it?
Fair enough. Well, man of the moment. Anyway,
Chalamet. Even I
Chalamet.
Chalamet.
fine. So, as Timothy, or Tim as I call him, plays, yes, the early years of Bob Dylan. So I'm guessing a lot of highlight on this, I think, and good word of mouth from what I hear, possibly. Richard and James, you both did see this. What do you think? Expecting good things out of this? What's the what era does it portray anyway at the beginning? Just let's
Yeah. So, well, actually, in a way, you already summed it up. First of all, it's a movie by James Mangold, pretty famous, let's say, director. And yeah, he does star Timothée Chalamet as Bob Dylan in his early career, because literally, yes, it is definitely at his beginnings in the early 1960s. And that's it. That's my main issue with this movie is actually that I think that's kind of it. If you want to sum up what the movie is about, is that literally it is Bob Dylan early career between 1960 and I guess 1965, I believe, and he goes from one festival to a folk festival to another. He meets the right person at the right time to get to make a name of himself, to actually to get popular, to become this crazy star, especially for teenagers. And that's my main issue, that actually I don't think there is much more to it in this movie. I'm not going to go into details of how the movie was made. It's just that for me, and you kind of said that a bit, James, earlier, about how I feel about biopics in general. And in a way, this Bob Dylan movie, A Complete Unknown, is kind of the problem of the problem that I have in general with biopics, is that sometimes you can choose the right person, the right celebrity in any kind of field. Not only entertainment, by the way. It can be an historical figure. It can be, I don't know. I believe that if you want to make a good biopic, you have to find someone obviously that has, in his field or in other fields, it has historical relevance, but also, I'm sorry to say, but also you have to develop also his personal struggles or his professional struggles, but actually his life will have something to tell, a story to tell. Perhaps Bob Dylan's life has a story to tell, but the movie doesn't show it. That's the problem. The movie is boring. Because if you are a fan of Bob Dylan, and I'm listening to Bob Dylan when I'm running sometimes, so good. And I could go to a music store and buy a CD album, and that's it. But if I'm going to a movie theater, I'm expecting a movie that is a movie. And here, the only enjoyable moments where Timothée Chalamet is playing Bob Dylan on stage and singing the songs that we all know. And there should be more to it. And I don't think there is. There's an attempt at a love triangle that is not developed enough, for example. His own professional struggle about he wants to do his own music. He wants to change sometimes the style of music, but he wants to actually adapt himself. He doesn't want to do what the public wants to. He wants to not to do what the audience is asking, but do his own stuff. Okay, but it's not enough again to make it interesting, in my opinion. Again, I was comparing on my way home last night. I was comparing with Bohemian Rhapsody a few years ago, which I'm a big fan of Queen. I'm not a big fan of Bob Dylan. So, okay, maybe I'm biased, but I don't think that Bohemian Rhapsody deserved a Best Picture award. That being said, it's a better movie. Why? Because I believe that the director who did Bohemian Rhapsody focused also not only on the problems of Queen producing music, but also about the own struggles of the relationship between Freddie Mercury and the other band members, and the personal struggles of Freddie Mercury as a man. And that made it a more complete movie, let's say. in this one, Bob Dylan, they failed that part. In my opinion, they just focused. Fair enough. They just focused on the musician and the festivals, and okay, but then they do a documentary. Then don't do a movie. But yeah, that's why I didn't particularly enjoy it as a movie. And again, I just enjoyed the musical parts, which I guess it's important in a biopic about Bob Dylan.
James, you feel the same way?
Yeah, I do actually agree pretty much with everything Richard said there. I mean, I did enjoy it, but I did sit there probably towards the middle thinking, I'm enjoying this, but I don't think this is that good. It's fine. Like and I think there's a big part with these, I've said this before, but I think these films sit on the shelf until they suddenly find the lead actor, and finding Timothy Chalamet is like he's born to play this part, and I think that might even be the reason we see him pick up Best Actor at the Oscars. We don't know. It's nominated for eight awards, but yeah, I felt the thing with Better Man is actually that the story of Better Man is like it's about a man who has a struggling relationship with his father, and it's about sort of that. There's not really an emotional through line to a complete unknown. It falls into that biopic trap of then they did this, then they did this, then they did this, then they did this. It doesn't really feel like there's a structure. It covers a lot of that era, and some of it's quite interesting. So I think I was interested to find out a bit more about Bob Dylan, but it doesn't. Yeah, and the period detail's great in it. Boyd Holbrook as Johnny Cash, because James Mangold also did the Walk the Line film with Joaquin Phoenix about 20 years ago, I think now. And Boyd Holbrook is playing Johnny Cash in this because he knew Bob Dylan. I didn't even realize it was Boyd Holbrook, and I think he's the only person who's not up for a supporting actor or actor award in this. But it felt a little bit like the sort of Bohemian Rhapsody thing, or like the Bob Marley One Love film come out last year, which is an extraordinary artist, but a very by the numbers, play it safe biopic. There's also a thing in there where he's in this film that the girlfriend's name is not the real name of the girlfriend. So this is one of those things I was saying where it feels like there's been some interventions by the artist to try and change some of the information. There is also something in this where there was a concert where someone shouts Judas at him, which is apparently quite a famous thing, and they've moved the location of that. I have less of an issue with that because I think if you want to be that go into that much detail and keep it not change anything, that means you have to have a scene where they explain they're going to London, and then they go to England, they do this thing, and then they come back, all for the sake of one line. And actually some of the liberties that Bohemian Rhapsody took are my least of the issues with it, because I think at least they were trying to structure something that's sort of entertaining. But yeah, it's fine, passable entertainment, but I definitely prefer Better Man out of the two.
Okay, fair enough. Interesting. Right, well, that was a complete unknown. Missed the title. Right. Next, a Squid Game 2, season 2, reached Netflix. I think last year's basically the phenomenal kind of like first season hit worldwide and from word of mouth. It's the North Korean survivalist drama. South Korean novel. That would be a different season.
That would be a different survival drama. Yeah.
Leaving North Korea. Well, it's a stupid joke.
Apologies to our Korean. If you have any listeners, I doubt it. Anyway, but yes, season 2 of the South Korean drama. I saw this, I think, episode 1. I was thinking, how do you really repeat this? Is it going to be lightning in a bottle? And first episode looks very intriguing. But Richard, you saw this, and I'm guessing you binged it. Yeah. Is it as good as, or maybe not so good as the first one? Is it worth?
Well, yeah. So I'm just gonna do some kind of disclaimer. There's no way I can talk about this without doing a huge spoiler for season 1, to be honest. So it's better if I don't know if anyone who is listening actually cares about Squid Game, but I don't see how I can avoid this.
Let's just assume people have seen Squid Game 1, and then
because obviously the just to explain the premises of it, obviously Squid Game, what it's about is some kind of shadow organization who organize crazy, deadly games for people who are in debt. They kind of recruit people who are in crazy debt in South Korea, and like 400-ish people. They put them together, and they play what they look like childish or children games, like 4 or 5 children games. And every time someone fails at this game, he is killed, shot dead. And at the end, there is only one who survives. And obviously, that's why it's a big spoiler. At the end of the season 1, the one actually who does survive is the main character that we follow from episode 1, and he survived the first season, but he is obviously a very bittersweet victory because people like that he met there died. He doesn't understand why this thing even exists, and so he decides, I think even at the last scene of the season 1, decide actually that he will not use the money that he won because they won like, I don't know, in dollars or pounds and euros, like millions or billions of euros. He doesn't want to use that money for his personal happiness. He's trying actually to use that money towards actually destroying that game, or actually to find actually who is behind it. And well, if he already find one of the people who is behind it. Anyway, he wants actually to destroy that game, let's say. And that's actually the story of season 2. And the question is, the season 2 for me makes a good choice by not doing just a copy paste of season 1. That's what I was afraid of, to be honest. I was thinking, well, they see that's a great recipe. Even in popular culture now, you can see actually Squid Game table games or Squid Game video game, etc. Because it's a very simple, in a way, funny thing to actually to see people actually playing children games and being killed if they miss, etc. And fortunately, this is only part of season 2. Since the main storyline is again based on this main character, is him trying to, I said, to find the organizers, to go all the hierarchy of whoever is behind all of this. And he and also another survivor, season 1, a detective who has his personal struggle because he knows that his brother is actually one of the guys actually who is actually one of the psychopaths who is behind all of this. So these two have 2 different paths towards actually the same goal. They kind of we will unwillingly work together in this thing. And yeah, to sum up, yeah, the season is, yeah, it's building up on season 1. That's actually the best thing about it, by introducing new, more interesting characters playing the game, to be fair, like people you will enjoy hating. I'm thinking about, especially about one. I'm not going to spoilers, but people that you enjoy hating and you'll be happy when they die. And also others actually, but I've also the personal, I think there is more character development for people actually who play the game as well. And just FYI, it's only 7 episodes long, because in a way, and that's for obviously to make more money, I think that season 2 and 3 looks more like a season of 15 episodes divided in 2. Because how it ends, so I'm not going to tell how it ends season 2, but it's very abrupt, very cut almost, an ending very with a huge cliffhanger, but like crazy cliffhanger. And but it was shot back to back, so the season 3 is coming, like, it's not like season 2 was released only 3 years after season 1. We're not gonna have to wait so long. That's the problem of TV shows nowadays. At least this one is coming, and it's gonna be the end, not gonna be a 4th season. It's going to be on 27th of June, I believe, 2025. And it's going to be a huge hit. Netflix is, with all the things that they do wrong, but creating sometimes maybe too much, they're going to have a great year, I believe. Because, yeah, they best shows, at least in numbers. Now, different taste in the world, obviously, but their best shows is coming this year, and they're gonna kill it. So you have two great shows. You have Stranger Things and Squid Game ending this year. So I can't even imagine the numbers of viewership that they're gonna do. And I think it's gonna be around the same time, by the way. I think also Stranger Things will come during the summer or at least maybe September. The viewership of Squid Game season 2 broke the records of Netflix history. For the record, they broke it. I think the first day, even better than Wednesday, which is another season also coming in 2025. So it's going to be a big year for Netflix.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm glad to hear that because 'cause the first one really was on the strength of the word of mouth that you were hearing internationally. I mean, it's hard to pick with so many titles available which ones you really want to watch, but then the ones that go above the water are the ones that you hear about. And season one, fantastic. And I'm glad that this seems to be carrying on that momentum. All right, well, looking forward to that actually, to doing season two. Right, next, A Real Pain, which is, I think, it's Jesse Eisenberg and Kieran Culkin. I think this is a buddy road trip to Poland or something, and it's almost this is written, not directed by Jesse, but anyway, seems to be at the steering wheel of this movie. Heard some good things about this. James and Richard, you both saw this. So, James,
Yeah. So this is like you say, Jesse Eisenberg and Kieran Culkin as two Jewish cousins embarking on a road trip from New York to Poland. And we follow them. Kieran Culkin's character seems particularly sort of agitated. He seems very sort of fidgety and full of manic energy. And it kind of looks at their sort of fraught relationship, I suppose, as they make this journey, and the other members of the sort of party that they're with going on this road trip. And yeah, I thought this was quite good. It's sort of like I suppose a bittersweet comedy drama in a way, as well as a buddy road trip movie. So it's sort of dealing with emotional trauma, but also sort of family trauma, maybe passed down, as well as that they make the way to visit a concentration camp in Poland as it was occupied by the Nazis in the Second World War. And I thought it was really good. I mean, I don't know, I'm not really sure what Jesse Eisenberg has directed before. I think he wrote this as well. And I thought it was really good. I mean, there's not any fat in it either. It's sort of like a very lean, about 90 minutes piece. I've heard some people say that Kieran Culkin is pretty much playing his character from Succession, which I've only watched the first series of. The only thing I would say is that I think the character here is more sympathetic in his circumstances. Obviously, the characters in Succession are quite they're from very sort of spoiled backgrounds, aren't they? In Succession, they're all kind of after each other, and there's a lot of power struggle going on. There's not really a power struggle going on here, but there's an element of how much Jesse Eisenberg's character is supporting Kieran Culkin's character, and maybe the toll that is taking on him, which is not evident to start with. But I thought, yeah, I really like this. And I think it's up for a few Oscar awards as well. Yeah, and it's definitely worth watching.
right, Richard, pretty worth watching then. Don't you agree?
Yeah. It was a decent movie. I agree with the fact that Kieran Culkin, in a way, if you enjoyed Succession, you would think actually that he's kind of in the same vibe. I mean, the way he acts is kind of the same vibe. But yeah, if you watch actually the whole Succession TV show, actually, there is some character development also in Succession that actually you can see here as well. It does show layers in Succession, and it does show layers here as well. It was a nice little movie, I would say. About the title is about actually the different kind of pain that actually people actually are going through in their lives. And obviously, I think that's I don't know if you mentioned that, James, but yeah, the trip where they are going to go in concentration camp, etc. It's definitely, for me, almost the trip is almost a narrative point that actually the director, writer, Jesse Eisenberg is trying to make. But actually, and there is also what I'm trying to say, that there is a scene as well. Jesse Eisenberg is doing a monologue, which is a very nice scene, and he does say, in a way, his feelings towards his cousin, played by Kara Culkin, and in a way, it kind of sums up, I believe, the whole idea of the movie. And he's talking about their ancestries, the people actually who were their great parents who died in these camps, who felt the real pain, the real suffering, one of the most terrible suffering in history. And at the same time, he, especially in his cousin, they are going through terrible stuff. I'm going to go into spoilers, but his cousin, especially, actually, he's going through terrible stuff, and he's thinking, it's, in a way, unfortunately, he kind of compared those two, and he realized actually that it's a mistake to compare those two pains. Let's say that actually, how can you complain about sometimes in your life of the problems that you encounter when you see the real struggles that happens 70 or 80 years ago? And but there is no, they're not trying to lecture you, whatever. In a way, on the contrary, it shows actually that our personal struggles, in a way, are also equally important as others, actually. It's not because we didn't go through war or whatever, but actually, but we shouldn't actually care about our own problems. But it's for the psychological, let's say, message of the movie is very nice. For me, they're just not memorable scenes, and especially the end was a bit flat. But yeah, I liked the message of the movie. That's it.
Okay. Oh, good. That's good to hear. Right. Next, we've got Severance, which I think is in season 2. It's just come out, and I do hear some very good things about that. Alfonso, you've seen this. I'm guessing you've seen season 1 and season 2, which has just come out.
Yeah, I have seen season 1 and the episodes that are out of season 2, which
give
is
us a
still developing.
Just tell us a bit about this, because I'm intrigued. Because
Well, it's about people who have decided to live two different lives, or to just have two different people inside of them. One that is just knows what happens inside of the work environment, inside of a company, and one that just knows what happens outside of the company, and they never know what the other person is experiencing. That's Severance in a concept. They decide that whatever happens at work, they don't want to know, and the other way around. So the series explores why this is happening, why this is happening to the characters specifically, the mysteries of the whole company, and who they are outside, who they are inside, what kind of clues we can get from one or the other. So it's a little bit like a mystery show, and a little bit like an absurdist comedy show. It is very particular. I think it has done very well with Apple for gaining subscribers, and like buzz, because Apple TV is not, sometimes their series come and go without any buzz among the general audiences, and this one has generated buzz because it's like a very original concept, and also interesting like settings. So I think they have a very good series in that sense. Like you're always thinking what is going to happen next, because the company itself, it's what it does is very mysterious and very strange, and you kind of find all kinds of things there. You never know what you're going to find in the next room. But at the same time, I don't know if it works, that part, so much for me. The parts of like comedy, absurdist comedy inside of the company, sometimes you just don't know if what is happening is part of comedy or it has a deeper meaning. And I am always there for finding more about the mystery. What I'm finding is like season 1 was, I felt rewarded after watching it. Season 2, I am finding maybe that from a production standpoint, they went all out. Like they have done very interesting things. Everything's bigger. Everything's with. I mean, more or less, there's not so much of a difference. But yeah, you can feel that they have all the money that they want, that they ask for. But the mystery kind of feels like it's getting like they want to stretch it out as much as possible. So I don't know if we're gonna get so many answers or the plot is gonna develop so fast as I would want to. And I am ambivalent about whether continue watching it or not, because I don't really enjoy that much the part of the comedy, but I really enjoy the part of the idea, the science fiction, let's say, idea, and what the mysteries that go with it, and how they play with revelations. So yeah, 50-50 for me, but overall worth checking it out, I guess.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Fine. Okay. I'm wondering whether to check it out or not. You got Christopher Walken in it, from what or was that just a rumor? Because I just heard
Christopher Walken, yeah, he's there.
Yeah.
He's there. Totally.
Okay.
He's a character. I don't know. Well, he's there. He's in the world. I mean, he's not
Good.
one of the main characters. He has a part of a. He's in this. Let's say he's part of the story of one of the main characters.
Alrighty. Okay. I'm intrigued. Fair enough. Okay. Thanks, Alfonso. Right. Next, Sing Sing, which I think is a prison kind of like witness drama, rather, from what I gather. I did know a little bit about this, but I don't know if it's a true story or not. But Alfonso, Richard, James, you all saw this. Just tell me a bit.
It is a theatrus. I mean, even some of the characters have done this kind of program.
Yeah.
It is based on a real program, and well, maybe the script itself is fiction, but based on what happens there every year. So the characters might be playing a version of themselves. But this is happening. This is a real program that helps people in prison get in touch with their emotions, with their creativity, feel that there is hope. So it is it's a touching film by the end. It shows you the hardships of being there and feeling like life is passing you by, and somehow, and how this makes them feel like there is purpose to them, to their lives. So you see their how this helps them with their daily struggles and how it is a relief. Colman Domingo, the protagonist, was very good, as he always is. Clarence, I don't remember his something about there's
Macklin.
somebody,
Clarence Macklin.
Yeah. Okay, that actor who has been in this program in real life, I think. He has real charisma on screen. Also, here he does kind of steal the scenes, and there it's quite a group effort also the movie. There are many characters. So yeah, I enjoyed it. The only thing that I enjoyed less was the handheld style. That it's maybe because it's the kind of story and the kind of people that are acting. Maybe they have to use this kind of handheld style with a lot of close shots, let's say, to follow them around. But overall, I enjoyed it.
Okay. Richard, you found this quite good.
Yeah, there's nothing more I can say. He summed it up, and also I felt about this movie. It's for me, it's a very beautiful movie. I think it was released months and months ago, to be honest, in other countries. But fortunately, in France, they realized actually they forgot actually to release it, and they say, "Oh yeah, shit, there is thing to release," so they released only this week. No, it's yeah, it's for me, it's a very moving movie. Let's say it's moving because it's in a way sad, but also a bit with some hope in it. I didn't know about this program. I'll be honest, I was ignorant. I didn't know that this program even existed until this movie. And it's at the end, no spoiler, but at the end when actually there is real footage of real prisoners actually who are on stage and doing actually some play or some musical, whatever. I thought actually, but I was thinking that's actually great. Actually, that this thing actually is happening not only in the US but in other countries. We discussed that with Alfonso. Yeah, it's a very it's a very different approach, very different point of view of life in jail, and I think that's actually the big strength of this movie. Is that obviously behind the smiles of being on stage, there is each of them have their own struggles and their own regrets of being there, and that's extremely sad. Obviously, you can only imagine what it must be like, but you can see actually how important something like that must be. It's also a love letter to arts in general and how important it is, but not only to prisoners. But I was thinking, I am not in jail, fortunately for me, but I feel in a way it's the same way sometimes. But actually, you are your own personal struggles in your private life or professional life. How important art is to actually to be a window to something else. Yeah, I think that's actually was another strong quality of this movie. The love letter for art and yeah, the fact that he is writing in his cell and in a way that's his only way of escaping. That's a lot of positive things for a movie that is a drama in jail, to be honest, which is maybe a paradox. But yeah, it is a lot of positive things in this movie. So I don't know if it's how do you call this? Is it a happy movie? But in a way, it is. It makes you smile. It makes you cry. But it makes me smile a lot. So I will recommend it 100%.
Thanks, Richard. Next, we have a spooky story called Presence. I think there's this Steven Soderbergh and I think David Koepp as well. I think they've got a few collaborations coming out this year. Big, talents in their own right. And saw the trailer for this. I'm just wondering what fresh perspective they can give to this. It's a ghost poltergeist story. James, you saw this?
Yeah, so as you said, Black Bag is coming out soon. I don't know if that's the same writer, but that's Steven Soderbergh, and I think is it Kate Blanchett and Michael Fassbender, and that's just like in 2 months' time. Such it is that sometimes you get two films from the same director in a very short space of time. I'm going to be brief on this, and that's in the spirit. See what I did there? Didn't even mean to do it.
I heard that.
This is one of those films where it's very difficult to talk about without spoiling, because there's something even as I was about to introduce this that I thought if I say that kind of gives away one of the key conceits maybe of the movie. But it's basically a family that move into a new house, and they're convinced there is a presence lurking. There is a young son and a young daughter. The daughter, in the course of the movie, has lost two of her friends, in circumstances that seem to be drug overdoses. We're not too sure. Um, and there's this really sort of creeping camera work. So in the each room, there's not usually I don't think there's any edits other than between scenes, so you get a continuous takes all the time, and the camera kind of floats in a little bit like they've stolen the camera from The Shining, and it sort of floats in, and you get the scene, and it floats out again. It feels a little bit stagey from that point of view, not in a bad way, but sort of they managed to make it quite cinematic. Um, and it's got a nice sort of twisty. I mean, there is a twist in it. I don't know if I appreciate it, to be honest. Um, but it's a very short film as well. It's 85 minutes. I think I'd have enjoyed it more maybe on streaming. Also, I saw it at an unseen screening, so I didn't know what the film was going to be, and I thought it was going to be a bunch of other stuff I really wanted to see, and it was this. Um, but we often have said about like, oh, a film's too long, and in this, it's actually almost feels like it's too short, like it doesn't get going enough. Like it's 85 minutes according to IMDb, and it almost feels like it needs something to make it a little bit more substantial. Like it almost feels like a short film that's been stretched out rather than a film that's really good. I mean, the performances are fine in it, and I think the camera work is the most striking thing. There is also a moment towards the end that did send shivers up my spine. Um, but it's one of two films out at the moment. The next one we're going to talk about next month, but where it's really good to go in cold. I know it's very difficult to sort of be very vague about a film because why would you want to see it? But sometimes you go, this film is really meant to be seen without knowing anything about it before you go and see it, I think. And I think that's the case in Presence.
Brilliant. Yeah, okay. Intriguing. Fine, thanks, James. Next. Those Star Wars fans, those that are left. We have Skeleton Crew, which came out over December and 8 episodes. This is the Star Wars series. I've got another one coming out. They've got Andor coming out this year, but Skeleton Crew, kind of like a kid's adventure. Jude Law stars in this as well. Andrew, yes, you saw Skeleton Crew. What do you think? It's one of those things where you think, oh, I really don't want to watch it, but is it worth pursuing it?
Well, I think the whole not wanting to watch has to do more with other content and not necessarily this. So watching it, it's sort of like you going in, it's sort of you'd be skeptical, and it's like, oh, again, and yes, but I think the whole reason, or one of the reasons why the works is because they don't have like, oh, let's stick in this character from this film or that. It's pretty much a whole new group of characters that yeah, you haven't seen them in any of the films or the series before. It does allude to other things that happened, or concepts, things that have been mentioned elsewhere in the franchise. But no, there's none of that stuff from the Skywalker saga. So it's a new group of characters, and it's kids. There's well, it starts out the two kids, these boys, Wim and Neil, and I guess Neil, forget his species name, but and Wim is human, and they Wim, his whole thing is that he's bored with his existence on the planet, even though it's set in a kind of Star Wars setting. It has a lot of the tropes and things that you see from like films like The Goonies or The Explorers, like 1980s films. I don't want to say Stranger Things, but just like kind of the idea of like, oh, we're living in a suburban community, and it looks, even though it's a Star Wars setting, it kind of is like, oh yeah, this is familiar, a suburban setting. Kid is bored, he wants more from life. So one day he and Neil, Wim and Neil, and these two girls that they kind of know, Fern and KB, find this derelict ship on their planet, and they're wondering what the deal is. They have all these theories about the ship, and they go off in the ship, and it winds up taking off, and then things start to happen, and it becomes this kind of, to use the cliche, a rollicking adventure. And I was gonna say pirates are involved, and I don't just mean like pirates like pirating videos or films, or pirates in sort of like, Captain Phillips, that kind of like the more stereotypical. It's a Disney franchise, so it combines the two things, Star Wars and pirates, in their own way. So very much pirate cliches, but in a Star Wars setting. So, but it's fun. It's enjoyable. It's not deep. It's not trying to tie into larger things in the Star Wars canon. Maybe they allude to things, but it's a it's a standalone story. You don't really need to worry about, do need to watch all these other things to understand it. If you've seen some of the films and the Skywalker saga films, some of them, I mean, you'll understand it. It's not something where you have to be like, oh, I have to watch this, understand it, or that. It is Star Wars, but again, it does kind of have a retro feel to it, again, with the Goonies and Explorers, and Super 8, that film that J.J. Abrams did a decade ago. Because it's very much like that, but in a Star Wars setting. So, it's something decent. I guess the expectations are that, like, oh, another Star Wars thing where they're going to try to shoehorn or stick in this character or that. They don't do any of that. It's totally new characters, new stuff. The only thing is, without trying to spoil, the series ends kind of abruptly, almost. So you kind of wish there was maybe a little bit more, something resolving stuff. But yeah, I mean, it's fine. I don't know if they're going to continue this and bring the characters back for another season or series, but if not, then yeah, that's fine. This is just something fun to watch. So
it is, it is refresh. Just, I think the best part of it is that it's refreshingly its own thing. It's almost, it's a kid's adventure. Good production values, I must say. They Disney do spend their money on this, and it looks beautiful. Something, the landscapes and the realizations of what's going on. But yeah, you can just sit down, watch it, and then never see anything else attached to this again. Jude Law is very good in it, though. It is one that you think, yeah, you don't really want to see the whole Star Wars thing. You think, I really don't want to get into this again. So, but it is better than you think it is, and it's just some good performances. But yeah, it's enjoyable. But I don't think the numbers have been huge, though. So that's maybe not the fault of this series, but another problem to do with the IP. Anyway, so another franchise, the Marvel franchise, does season 3 of What If? You saw this again, Andrew. Any interesting episodes that
Uh, yeah, yeah. I think at this point that's another case where I think people are just kind of like more Marvel content, more MCU content. There may be stuff that people are looking forward to from the MCU, but I don't know if this necessarily was one of them. I can't say. That being said, there were some fun episodes. I will say that without getting to all the specifics of every specific episode, I do kind of feel that maybe they were hoping, because it plays into the series a bit, or the latest season a bit, that Eternals would have been seen by more people, because there's a couple of episodes that kind of tie into stuff from the Eternals. So it's like, I mean, maybe it won't be entirely lost. I'll get to that in a moment. But it just feel like they maybe thought maybe that more people have seen the Eternals, and it wouldn't be this like, well, people won't get this reference. Now, having said that, one of the episodes doesn't really follow through in the way you think it would follow through, because it deals with something that, like, what if something that happened, the Eternals, actually happened, or something that threatened happen actually happened, and you think like, oh, this is a really good idea, like what, and they touch on that a little bit, but it becomes kind of its own story that has, really nothing to do with that, and it's like, oh, okay, well, this could have been, anything, and not necessarily. And I think what it is also is they're trying to promote an upcoming project that's coming to Disney Plus later this year. So I will say overall, this latest season, for those who maybe have or haven't seen What If, the first season was pretty good. The second season was a little bit more mixed. I would almost say this, and I get a kind of general sense that it's like the weakest of the three seasons. And maybe it's because they're trying to wrap things up and maybe go on to other projects, or maybe it's just because, other reasons. Anyway, I think with this, they kind of get very whimsical. There's a lot of episodes that are they're very fun, they're enjoyable, but they don't do everything they could with the concept. And there's one episode where they show glimpses of characters that are like mashups from other worlds, and it's sort of like, yeah, like maybe they could have done stuff with that. So overall, looking the season, this final season, I guess one of the highlights was the episode with, and I just surprised you that they have whatever, they've done this in the show in general, but this particular season, a lot of things where they take a character from this series or this movie and put it from this character who's never actually met the other character. And one of the examples is where they follow up in an early episode and have Darcy and Howard the Duck get married, and that leads to things later on in the season. Those two characters who never met anywhere else in the MCU, they kind of met during season one of those episodes. There's another episode that's set in what's just like 1940s, early 1950s Hollywood, and it's, Howard Stark having gone into the movie industry, and you have Agatha as a big movie actress, and then another character shows up from elsewhere in the MCU, and then there's another episode that's kind of set in the old, it's kind of like a movie western, U.S. from late 1800s, and it has Shang-Chi and Kate Bishop going on different adventures together in the old western U.S., what would become part of the U.S. So a lot of interesting kind of mix-ups or pairings, mashups. So yeah, there's fun episodes, but I think there's just a sense that they could have done more with the concept. And I think another thing is that one of the people who was very involved this past season is helping take over the show running duties on X-Men 97 for, I guess, their season 3. So I think people are a little concerned of that. Like, does this mean that show will go downhill at some point? Hopefully that won't be the case. So yeah, I mean, there's Marvel content out there that people might be looking forward to, but I mean, this is all right. There's good moments, but I mean, I don't know if it's something I would necessarily, other than maybe like random bits, like again the whole Darcy and Howard the Duck getting married. That fun stuff like that. I will say that the Kate Bishop and Shang-Chi pairing, I think that's one case where I might have been better as like a movie, because as it was for like a half hour or less than half hour episode, certain things just kind of felt rushed. Like one moment this and then moment that, and it's like, well, maybe some more characterization, or and things maybe got a little too resolved, but that's just because of the format. So, but yeah, I mean, it was all right this year, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. There's probably other content out there that maybe I'm looking forward more to from the MCU. So
There are no plans on season 4, right?
no, this was the final season.
Okay, that's what I
You
thought.
sound hopeful that there won't be a season 4, Richard.
No.
No,
I
there's
was
plenty
just thinking,
of content.
no, I was just wondering actually, because I was looking at the numbers, and actually maybe that's Andrew's take, but well, Rotten Tomatoes says actually that it has a 81% fresh, so it's not that bad actually. So I was thinking, who knows?
I mean, I'm just giving my take. I
Yeah.
mean, the individual episodes are all right, but I think it's just there's just a sense of disappointment. Like they could have done more with the concepts and more things with those ideas, and maybe had, again, if you haven't seen this latest season, then it's not going to make a lot of sense. But had Eternals been seen by more people, then then maybe they could have done more with that, and that would have opened up some new possibilities. But it's just like, so it's there, it's content. So
It does feel though, it like Marvel's just really stuck between its last big wave and whatever the next big wave, if it does come, with the next return of Robert Downey Jr. That's what I feel. It's kind of like what the sea change is going to be. So it's just kind of like this, like
I
a
think it's gonna be a very pivotal year for Marvel. Actually, in 10 days, there's gonna be a first of 3 movies this year for Marvel, and that's the first time in I don't know how much time they have 3 movies within the same calendar year. Actually,
well, that's an after effect of the strikes.
yeah, the strike, yeah, of course, yeah. But when you remember back in the day, like it was 15 years ago, back in the day in the 2010s, it was kind of that pattern, having 2 or 3 movies a year, and then by this, you would think actually that out of these 3 this year, at least one will be a success that will give them the boost again. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know.
They also have a lot of series this year, so there's definitely no shortage of content. I mean, as it is right now, they have an animated series, Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, which is basically, it's not the main timeline, but it's like set in an alternate.
That's crazy. Anyway,
yeah. So
it's crazy to have a 15 iteration, like a 15 version of. Anyway. One more is to tell about the origin of Spider-Man.
Well, they don't do the origin as much.
Okay.
But they don't really do that as much. That being, it's good so far. I will say that series is good so far. It's only 2 episodes, so it's just unfortunately there was something that happened in real life, but that's another story. The series so far is all right, so we'll see what happens. And Coleman Domingo, we mentioned earlier, is the voice of Norman Osborn, so it's he's good. So we'll see.
Great. Right, thanks for that. Fine. Next, we have romantic comedy. We Live in Time. I think that's Andrew Garfield and Florence Pugh. I think this is a kind of a concept of a met by chance or by accident, no pun intended, romantic comedy with is who saw this? This was James. You saw this.
Yeah, it's not a romantic comedy, more of a romantic drama, I suppose, but more of a sort of life drama, I suppose this is trying to be. So it's A24 is the studio. Andrew Garfield, there's a nice segue from Spider-Man. Andrew Garfield's in this. And Florence Pugh, another nice segue from the MCU talk. Obviously, is going to appear in Thunderbolts shortly. And they're very good in this movie, I think. It sort of had this charming trailer showing this sort of meet cute where she's run him over and that's how they meet and it follows their life story. But I think the problem for me with this film is it's got this non-linear structure, which actually the first time I watched it, I thought that's the most interesting thing for me about this film. I don't mind that. But I think it actually hinders the drama because in romantic dramas, you sort of meant to care, well, any drama, you're meant to care about the characters. But because here the first thing we see is Florence Pugh making an omelette for Andrew Garfield, I found myself thinking, well, why do I care about this couple? I don't have any interest in them. You then get some other bits of their life story, and then you get the sequence which is in the trailer where she runs him over, and that's the start. And you think, well, surely that would be the best way to start the movie, because then you're kind of invested in these characters. You might go on that little journey with them. They are very good in it, but I just feel that non-linear structure doesn't help them. Like with Memento, there's an option to watch Christopher Nolan's Memento in chronological order on the Blu-ray. You can go in and you can watch it, and it's interesting to do after you've watched the proper movie. But I've never done that a second time, because you realise so much of it's a great movie, Memento, but so much of it is to do with that structure making the film. I think here it doesn't help it. It actually stops you connecting with the characters. I was talking earlier in A Better Man that there's a couple of sequences that really got to me emotionally. There's a sequence in this that should, because the way it's set up and the imagery in it. And I thought as they started to go somewhere, I was like, oh, maybe this is the moment when the film gets me emotionally. And although I've not enjoyed it up to this moment, I'm going to go, well, it did. But it didn't, I've got to say. And I haven't really found anybody. I mean, maybe other people on the call have seen this and loved it, but I haven't really found anybody that particularly likes this movie. I mean, it's kind of well shot, but it's not the best. It's about a month since I saw it now. In fact, it's exactly a month, because we're recording this on the 1st of Feb, and I saw it on New Year's Day. And I remember thinking to myself, this is a really bad way to start the year off with movies, because this is not. This is, but actually, it's very forgettable now. I'm kind of trying to rack my brains like a month after, and I'm like, oh, it's that film, and it's the most memorable thing maybe about this is in the publicity photo. So this went viral. It shows Florence Pugh and Andrew Garfield, and they're on a merry-go-round. But one of the horses has this really like boggly eyes and a massive grimacing face. And nobody noticed that in publicity, or maybe they did and thought this will go viral. And people were making jokes about, oh, look, it's starring these two wonderful actors and this CG merry-go-round horse. But it's just a very, I thought it was a bit substandard. I actually wanted to include this so I could rant about it. And I just feel like talking about it is just draining the energy out of me. We live in linear time. We don't live in this flashback time that they're trying to make us do. It doesn't work for me. I hope someone else enjoys it.
Right. Interesting. Okay. Wow. Thanks, James. I'm glad you saw that, and I won't have
And
to.
you didn't.
But he's not. He isn't. He isn't.
Next, now from that to a huge high concept film, which looks like was made 20 years ago, but it's back in action. Jamie Foxx and Cameron Diaz. Looks like an action comedy, spy comedy.
That's the one.
Well, I'm not intrigued, but I'm just wondering why. I mean, okay, well, you saw this. Alfonso, sell me this movie.
Good luck.
Yes.
Well, it is what you say it is, actually. Yeah. It is a family action comedy with those two very charismatic actors who sell the movie all right. It's a fun time. The script is good enough. The comedy lines are good enough. These two have chemistry, and they have. I mean, it's a movie that never takes itself seriously. It's like a really proper Hollywood comedy, action comedy with like, like this family, these two spies who retired 15 years ago, and created this family with a daughter, a teenage daughter, and a younger son. And now they are back in action. The whole family is back in action because they feel they are threatened and they need to go on the run. Basically, that's the main idea.
Wow.
4 characters, and the kids don't know what their parents were back in the day, that they were international spies, and they have to escape the US, go to the UK. Glenn Close is also in this movie. Andrew Scott is also in this film. So there are those two also, and there's what I suppose is a British comedian also there which I don't know his name because he's quite new, but he plays another character in this. So it's enjoyable. It's enjoyable for the whole family. Not the amazing film, not believable in the slightest, but yeah, it entertained me. I had a good time overall. So as Netflix original films go for this kind of blockbustery film with Hollywood stars, is not bad. There are many worse than this.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, it does seem like that ilk of those films that Netflix were pushing out during COVID, where you didn't have any cinemas open, and they were pushing these, which Jamie Foxx did star in a lot of them. So it kind of seems of that ilk, and maybe he's under a contract just to do a few.
Maybe they got Cameron Diaz
Which
actually
is-
back in action, which is like a little bit meta, but Cameron Diaz was a little bit like out of action, and with this he's back in action, and it's a welcome like return from her. I enjoyed that she was doing that character because she gets some good lines, and you kind of laugh with her.
Mm.
Can I just say
Okay.
as well, Alfonso, I've literally just messaged my mum to say that you've recommended Back in Action because she likes an action film on a Saturday night and she doesn't listen to this. It's not out yet. So I just messaged her.
Yeah,
So
it's a
Back in
good
Action sounds like
recommendation.
you might enjoy this. Yeah.
Yeah, she I think she will enjoy it. Yeah, it's what it
When
is.
when you said all the family, is there like violence in it? Is there swearing or is it like a PG
It
action
is
film?
it is very PG for all the
Oh, okay.
family. It's
Ah.
for the kids also. It is those four characters. All of them could see the film.
Okay. Okay. In safe hands then. Right. Next. Maria, which is guessing the Maria Callas biography. Is this Angelina Jolie in the lead role? Andrew, you saw this. I don't think it's reached the UK yet, but
Oh, because I thought it was a Netflix thing.
maybe
It
then.
it had a limited release, so I've seen it as well.
I saw the
At
trailer
the start of the
yesterday.
year, but it's on Netflix. I don't know if it's out yet or if it's coming out onto Netflix, but it was a very, very limited release.
Mm.
Yeah.
Right, same in the US, I think, because of the Netflix's business model or whatever. So limited cinema release and then Netflix. So that's just how they do it. But anyway, yeah, what it is that this is the third in the, I guess, a trilogy of films from Chilean filmmaker Pablo Larraín. Yeah. And the first of those films was Jackie, about Jackie Kennedy Onassis, which is kind of interesting given this film. We'll get to that in a moment. That was with Natalie Portman as Jackie, the title. And then the second film was Diana Spencer, Princess Diana, played by Kristen Stewart. And then this film. And they're basically the filmmakers focus on prominent women from the 20th century. So this film, Jason's saying, it's about Maria Callas, the American Greek multinational opera singer. And it's not necessarily her whole life per se. It's mostly focused on the final week of her life. The opening scene is real life spoiler, her passing away in 1977, and then it flashes back a week, and we see the final week of her life. And again, she's played by Angelina Jolie. And during the story, we get other flashbacks to earlier points in her life when she was kind of like at the high point of her career, and also to when she was, I guess, a teenager, during World War II. But there's also some flashbacks to, and this is what I kind of alluded to before, so that the filmmaker had done a film about Jackie. There's apparently a relationship that Maria Callas had with Aristotle Onassis, and there's certain points where she's with him, and she had this relationship with the businessman, where they'll run into, this is like a flashback during the early '60s, and they meet then President John F. Kennedy. And he mentions his wife, and it's sort of like, this is almost like a shared universe type thing, except in real life. So, but for the most part, the film is basically her final week being alive, and it's like I said, there's these flashbacks, and so every so often there'll be flashbacks to early points in her life. But for the most part, what the film is, it's her and then these two servants who seem to be her only companions, and she's taking a lot of medications, and they're not really the best for her health-wise. Her health is really declining. She's not the singer she once was during the high point of her career. She's lost a lot of weight. And so she's kind of looking to get back her past glories. And so every so often during, what happens in the film, she'll go on tryout back into the singing career by trying out with this conductor playing the piano, to see if she still got it. And her singing is, not what it was. There's also, because she's on these medications, she's seeing things that aren't quite there, and you'll figure it out pretty quickly what's what and what's not what. So it's basically someone at their decline, and there's just sort of like looking back to when things were a lot better. And so she's wandering around the city where she lives at that point, Paris, and she's wandering around Paris, and see Paris landmarks. And the film itself isn't anything particularly special, and people had opinions about Jackie and Spencer and about those films. This film, it's a very good performance. As I understand it, and then there's been some discussion about it, Angelina Jolie, when you see her sing and perform, it's sort of like a blend of her and Maria Callas's voices. The voices are blended together somehow. I guess that's what they did behind the scenes. She does a decent job of being this person, being this character, and at a certain point you do see the character, not necessarily Angelina Jolie. So it's a good performance. And there were some side characters who I thought did a good job, and I kind of would have maybe liked to see a bit more of those characters. But I don't think the film itself was that special. It was all right, and it was a good performance. But I think if someone wasn't really as familiar with who Maria, if you already know who Maria Callas is, and maybe this is just like, okay, this is an interesting look at a person in the final week of their life, looking back, at all the good times, maybe some of the not so good times, but just looking back upon their life as a whole, just before they no longer around. But it's not like maybe there's more like definitive stories out there about the late opera singer, and what contribution she made, and what her appeal was. So it's I guess what the filmmaker wanted, the story he wanted to tell, and it's all right. But it's probably not something I would really spend a lot of time on thinking about. So, but some good acting, but yeah.
Okay. Seems to be a month for music biographies there. Anyway, okay, so that's Maria. Thanks, Andrew. Next, music theme, and we've got a soundtrack to a coup d'etat, which is a documentary, is it? This is about
It
jazz.
is. I mean, before I launch into a review of that, I'll say my
Hmm.
mum has WhatsApped me back and said, "Okay, thanks for that, Alfonso. What a great name." There you
Oh.
go.
There you go.
Cannot
And
can disagree with that. Anyway,
well, she said it's number one. Apparently, it's number one in the movie, so she's aware of it. But yeah. Anyway, sorry. A soundtrack to a coup d'etat. This is up for best documentary feature at the Oscars, so I thought I'd catch up with some of those. And this is a documentary about an incident where some jazz musicians stormed the UN Security Council following the assassination of Patrice Lumumba, who was the first prime minister of the Democratic Republic of the Congo in 1961. That may not have sold it to everyone, but it's quite an interesting. It's a very good use of archive footage, and it feels like they've really either they had the knowledge of where all this footage was, or they've really gone and assembled it very well. And it's sort of looking at the Belgian coup against Lumumba and how the CIA were involved, using jazz musicians, very famous jazz musicians such as Louis Armstrong and Nina Simone, to sort of deflect from their sort of involvement in that as well under President Eisenhower. It sort of reminded me of Adam Curtis documentaries. If you've seen these, they're quite well known in the UK on the BBC. They're often on iPlayer and they go on forever. But they're very, very interesting uses of archive footage from the time. The Adam Curtis ones tend to be a little bit more maybe abstract, or they go off into other areas to give you a view of what the world was like at the time. This actually does take things like jazz musicians and coups in African countries, things that seem completely unrelated, and show you why they're related. And there's often the sort of quotes from historical books and people's political biographies as well, sort of putting forward the case for people knew about these coup attempts, people knew about these kind of stuff. So it's quite an interesting documentary. If that sounds like your sort of thing, you'd be very bored if you don't want to watch a 2.5 hour black and white documentary soundtrack by jazz, and you might not want to. The other film that is up for obviously there's five, but I would imagine that possibly No Other Land is the biggest challenger to this, but I would say it's probably between No Other Land and Soundtrack to a Coup d'etat. But yeah, if it's worth the time if you like a documentary. If not, then watch the film Alfonso said instead.
On our watch list. Right.
I just want to give a shout out about this. Not this movie particularly, but I realize in Paris, I don't know for the rest of the world, it's always a challenge to watch the documentaries, the Oscar-nominated documentaries. To be honest, you honestly,
Yeah.
unless they are on streaming services, good luck finding even a small movie theater that actually release the Oscar documentaries. Anyway.
And I didn't, so I rented this and No Other Land off of Amazon Prime, because I know that these things. So last year, 20 Days in Mariupol, which is a absolutely devastating watch.
Yeah.
I mean, we often throw that word about or say that's a tough watch. That was a very, very, very tough watch, as you'd expect, but also something I feel like I can't look away from. If it's there, I'd need to know about this. I did have to take. I mean, I literally had to take breaks in that film. But this is a lot less. Soundtrack to a Coup d'etat is a lot less, obviously, difficult a viewing experience. But it's very interesting to me. You know, obviously, we're living through a time of a lot of political unrest, but there was something about this that is shocking, but also oddly kind of comforting to know that, as crazy as we think it is in the world at the moment, it's always been that crazy, and it's probably been worse. And the idea that this guy who's democratically elected they've just got rid of him because it's in their financial interest. They're sort of looking at it from a financial point of view, really, and that they're sort of worried about that. It's quite, yeah, it's obviously terrible, but it's an interesting watch to see this stuff. And like I say, it is, this is a time when now everything's on YouTube, isn't it? Everything, all the footage of stuff. But there's probably not a lot of people probably didn't even see this footage at the time. I wonder how many people had TV sets in the 60s and stuff like that. It would have been a much more of a privileged thing. So seeing all this footage sort of strung together to sort of tell a political story, sort of from start to finish, is very interesting for me.
Okay, thanks, James. Next, The Seed of the Sacred Fig. Alfonso, this is what, an Iranian drama or against the Iranian rebellion backdrop? So,
Political drama.
family drama? Is that right, Alfonso? You saw this?
Yes, it is a drama set in Iran. It is interesting because the director had to flee the country. He shot this film in secret, and in the middle of the shooting, he was warned that they were gonna arrest him, and so he had to escape, and he was a refugee in Germany. And actually, this film was finished with him giving like this kind of directions to the people who shot the rest of the film back in Iran, and he then even the editing was because they were sending what was shot to an editor that was in another part of Germany. I don't know how it was, but it was quite difficult to shoot. And it is because this movie is about a family. The father is a judge in Iran, and there is political unrest. There are a lot of people demonstrating against the regime, especially women, and because it's a theocracy, and it's quite strict, especially for women. And many people are getting arrested. Some people are getting executed. And the film starts with this family where the man is a judge who doesn't want to speak about his job to his family. The wife doesn't want they have two girls, more or less university or high school age. One that goes to university, one goes to high school, I think. And so she doesn't want, the wife doesn't want her daughters to get into all these demonstrations that are happening, doesn't want them to be in trouble, doesn't want them to speak about the father's job to anyone. It seems like there's a lot of danger everywhere. And suddenly one of the girls has a friend who gets involved into all of these. Well, then she gets hurt, basically. They go to university and something happens. And from then on, the movie starts getting more and more tense. Things start happening inside of the family that also go outside to what is happening in the country, and just gets more like a thriller, let's say, thriller drama. And the tension just goes up and up and up and up until the end. And I really enjoyed this film. It shows you a different reality that is happening. It's set like 5 years ago, I don't know, like not long ago.
Nothing like that.
And yeah,
Yeah.
and it was interesting to see how a family that when you meet them, they kind of remind you of many families in your country, but then you see what is concretely happening in that country, and how it affects the family to the core of the family, basically. And it was really, really well done. It is almost 3 hours, but it's very intense. It always keeps you glued to the screen, and it has a good resolution. So yeah, one of the best of the year for me, and I think for Richard as well.
Absolutely. I mentioned it before, but it's a very good movie. You don't see almost 3 hours of this movie, to be honest. It doesn't feel like 3 hours, and yeah, it is actually based on real stuff that happened only 3 or 4 years ago in Iran, and if I'm not mistaken, Alfonso, they are actually real footage. It's like a mix of real footage,
Yeah, it's actually
and film footage from the real social unrest in the streets of Iran. No, it's a very good movie, but actually managed to mix political events and the psychological thriller. So it's really well done. And
the footage is the most impacting, actually. Well, the story is very impacting, but the footage is real and equally impacting.
100%. And yeah, the idea, I don't know if you mentioned, but yeah, the main cause of the social unrest was actually that a girl who was a student was not wearing the appropriate clothes or whatever, and she died. Literally, an officer killed her, and that started everything, to be honest. And well, I would let you go online to see if there was any social consequence to this social unrest in Iran. But yeah, it's a really well done movie, and respect to the guy actually who had to flee from his own country to finish a movie, to be honest.
Yeah. He said in Cannes, I think this premiere at Cannes, at the Cannes Festival, and he said, "We are gangsters of cinema." And I only care about human rights and stuff like that, but it was incredible. Like it is another, like, making movies is hard. Then he's on another level entirely.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. I was wondering where we were able to catch that, but I think, James, did it come out here
Yes,
on
it's next
Friday?
month.
On Friday in the
Friday,
UK?
I've seen the trailer, but I mean, it's definitely going to be one I'm going to be seeking out. But yeah, apparently Friday for us.
Brilliant. Right. Next. Baby Girl. Looks like a Nicole Kidman stars in a steamy drama about a CEO having an affair with a younger man. Jane.
For the record, I'm extremely curious to hear what James has to say about this movie.
Okay.
Because I see the posters in all the metro in France everywhere, and I was thinking, is it another 50 Shades of Grey for grown ups or whatever? I don't want to see this. Or...
I want to add
Was this
later.
out? Is this out in France then yet, or not?
It's in out for 2 weeks, but I didn't want to see it because I was thinking if it's another version, but just instead of a teenager girl, you have a 50, 60-year-old girl. What's the point, man? Yeah.
I mean, I will say when I went to see this film, I was definitely the youngest person in there. So
Okay.
I don't know what that says. I'm also, I mean, and notes for this that just say Baby Girl James as well, which maybe that's going to be my name, my nickname for future meetups. Yeah, I mean, it's difficult. You sort of said like steamy drama, and I think that's always maybe what we assume when we see these things. I think there is a certain element of this of playing on those expectations. There is a moment in the so it's Nicole Kidman and Harris Dickinson, who is fantastic in things like Triangle of Sadness and Scrapper, which is a really good British film if you haven't had a chance to watch that. And she is a CEO at a company. He is an intern who comes in, and she does some mentoring, and soon there seems to be sort of a connection between them. He seems quite forthright and he's saying things which are quite forthcoming. He pulls himself out and says, "Oh, maybe that wasn't appropriate," knowing full well it wasn't appropriate. She is married to Antonio Banderas, who is obviously not an attractive man, so she's really struggling. She needs to look elsewhere, you know? But it's definitely a film that is looking at power dynamics, maybe, and things like that. I think that there's a moment in the trailer when he says you could lose everything here, and the film isn't really that movie. There is a moment when he says it in the film, and it's about halfway through, and you think, "Oh, they're going to go into that kind of making that." This does feel like it's something maybe a little bit more psychological. But yeah, I seem to have enjoyed it more than most people. I don't know what that says about me, but I think maybe the expectation with any film like this is, oh, it's going to be the new 50 Shades of Grey or something. And actually, I don't think it's trying to be. I know a few people have said, I weren't really sure what Paris Dickinson's motivations were, but I think it's more about her and her life and what she's sort of lacking maybe in her relationship. And I think as well, it's probably about the communication between her character and Antonio Banderas' character breaking down. It's got some really good use of music. There's some needle drops. George Michael's father figure is the one that I think that George Michael's estate are desperate for everybody to be streaming this song. I think they thought it would be like Saltburn, that everybody would be downloading or streaming that song, and it hasn't really happened. But there's some other really good uses of music in it. I think as well, it's sort of about fantasy versus reality, which is kind of like what Anora and maybe even Folie à Deux are about, you know, the idea of what we want and what the reality is. And I think it's getting into that. It's strange watching this film at this stage of my life, though, because if I was a randy 20-year-old man, I would be watching this thinking, oh, this would be great to have an affair with a woman twice my age. Now, if I had an affair with a woman twice my age, statistically speaking, she'd probably be dead. He probably would have died 3 years ago. And I've got a work mentor. I've got a work mentor, and this is so not what our relationship's like.
Yeah.
And I did wonder if this is just propaganda as well to try and get young guys and older women back into offices and to stop them working from home. But I did enjoy the movie. I thought Nicole Kidman gives a really, really good performance in it. I think Antonio Banderas does as well, and Paris Dickinson. But I think maybe he's not in it that much. But when he is Antonio Banderas, I think it's a really good dramatic sort of performance. Yeah, so that's Baby Girl.
Okay, intriguing. That's out of cinemas. That's gone, or what is that?
I think there's still some showings of it in the UK. I noticed we spoke about this before, but I feel a lot of films have a longer shelf life now. But what they do is they just might put them on once a week. So Better Man, for example, is one that if you want to see, it's probably on at your cinema just once a week. They don't pull things straight out, apart from Craven the Hunter. But they were probably like, "Look, we put on 50 showings, guys. Nobody's coming. We need to just get rid of it."
I think it is now also on digital. And as James said, it was surprising to me how it didn't stick to anything kind of like it says. They say that it's a sexy thriller or whatever it's called. They add the thriller element to it, not so much a thriller.
No. And I do sympathize with marketing guys. They've got to try and sell these movies somehow. But I think sometimes does it help? Obviously, it does financially to get people into the movie theater. But if you get them in and they hate the film because it's not what they thought it was going to be, the big sort of the best one I can explain is like Civil War. Like last year, I really love Civil War, and I think Richard, you said you really enjoyed it on the second viewing. But the trailer makes it look like a Tom Cruise movie, and it isn't that. So why they have to advertise it like that? And I think with this, they're like, hey, you know, in the early 90s, you had all those sort of things like Hand That Rocks the Cradle or Dead Calm was with Nicole Kidman, wasn't it? Or Basic Instinct. They want you to think it's going to be like that movie. And it's definitely not a thriller, this. It's definitely a drama, isn't it?
Yeah, and like an enjoyable drama. I don't know how to say it.
I think maybe there's stuff in there about maybe hang-ups that people have about things and being not judgmental. Maybe I don't know.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
kind of, I guess, where depends how you see the core relationship, or what it happens from your point of view will determine how you feel about the film, more or less.
Right. Okay, thanks. Next, we have animated feature, Flow, following the adventures of I think a cat after a great flood, seeks refuge with some other animals. Richard, what you've actually praised this, and I think it's got some Oscar nods or something.
Yeah.
More to meet the eye with this feature, I'm guessing. So, Richard, tell me about Flow.
Oh, yeah. So, to be honest, I didn't plan to see this until 3 weeks ago or something like that when it won the Golden Globe, if I'm not mistaken. Because when I saw the trailer back in the day, because it has been released, I mean, for a month, I think, in France, I think, at least. Yeah, I think a story about a cat in a world actually where the whole world has been flooded. Is that the right word, actually? But and okay, I was thinking, so what? But then, yes, the buzz has been strong, not only because it won the Golden Globe, but also I heard actually people actually who know their stuff talking about how it is kind of the next step apparently in animation. I'm not an expert in animation, to be honest, but that's what people much smarter than me have been said. For example, Guillermo del Toro actually has been praising this movie. I think, okay, that's surprising. So far, in the category of Academy Award for Best Animated Picture, I was thinking that The White Robot was actually definitely gonna win, because it was, for me, I think I've seen all of them. I'm reading at the list here, and apparently it was the best experience in the movie theater in the last 12 months. Flow, on the other hand, I see why people have been talking about it. So yeah, literally, it is a cat actually trying to survive and not being drawn in this water that is kind of invading the whole world, and he finds refuge on a small boat, and he is with different kinds of animals that can try to find refuge on that boat, from birds to dogs, whatever. So it sounds very boring, but it's not, I swear. There is no dialogue whatsoever. I mean, it's literally a cat and a dog, etc. It's like real animals, let's say, in animated motion. It's just that I'm guessing the reason why it is being praised so much is that it looks extremely real. I know that I keep saying that when I talk about animated movies, but it's very impressive what you can do nowadays. It sounds like a very old guy, but it's true. Yeah, it's very impressive what you can do nowadays, actually, in animation, because it's definitely look like a tree, but you can see if you have a pet, if you see the emotion of a cat or emotion of a dog, you definitely see it on screen here. And it's not actually everything else. It's not even the backdrop and the side and the cities and the water, etc. It's more actually, yes, the interactions between animals that are very, very impressive. And actually, but actually, in a way, even if you don't care about pets or whatever, like me, in a way, at some point, after 45 minutes, you're actually rooting for this cat and hoping actually that he will survive, which is very impressive. I don't know how to sell this movie. It's just very strange synopsis, obviously, but you have to give credit. It's very well done. I still believe that The White Robot is a better movie itself, but again, what do I know? And also, for some reason, this movie is nominated not only in the category for Best Animated Picture, but also in the as an international movie, in the foreign language one. Just because actually it's a Latvian movie. It's actually a co-production between France, Belgium, and Latvia, but it's a Latvian director, which is a very strange thing to do because it obviously, in my opinion, has absolutely no chance to win the international feature Oscar. So I don't get it. But anyway, that's just a side note. But yeah, it's worth just checking it out. I don't know if it's worth watching it in the movie theater, but it's only an hour and a half, just to actually to make your opinion and to see actually if you see something that I don't, which is apparently the next step in animation history.
Right. Okay. Intriguing. Right. Thanks, Richard. Next, and lastly, we come to Nickel Boys, which is a American reform drama. I'm guessing, James, you saw this?
Yeah, so I mean, we were talking about Sing Sing earlier, weren't we? Which is a prison drama, and this sort of becomes the same thing quite early on. So set in the 60s, it's basically a guy who is a young boy who is keeping the wrong or basically his friend steals a car, and he is then sent to a reform school because he's too young to go to jail in the 60s, and he's sent to Florida School for Boys. I believe so it's based on a book. I believe I don't think the story is a true story, but it's kind of like the sort of thing that did happen. And the actual institution is real. So it was Florida School for Boys when it closed, and after it closed, it's been revealed that there was terrible abuses going on at that place. As Andrew has pointed out, it's got really interesting camera work in it where everything is shot from a first person perspective, which weirdly reminded me of 1917, even though that isn't what they do in 1917. But there's something about the camera work in that film that really puts you in the heart of what is happening. And here, it's not a continuous shot. So you're seeing it, and you're not seeing it from the point of view of just one character. If two people are talking, the camera keeps cutting between those people, and you're seeing that person talk to you as the viewer. And it really helps sort of emotionally engage you with the story, I think. Even though this is dealing with racism and abuse of minors, so it's a very dark subject matter. It's got a 12A certificate in the UK, and it really reminded me of things like Room, the Brie Larson film, not the Tommy Wiseau one, the Brie Larson film Room, and Till, where it's like the film doesn't want to traumatize the audience. And although you know what is going on in these places, it's not like you get lengthy sequences depicting that. It's like the film is more focused on the connection between the children at the reform school and their relationships and their hopes for getting out and things. So Sing Sing, actually, the one thing about that film is you don't really know what anybody's in prison for. It's not about that. It's about they're already in prison, and it's about the art, like as Richard said. In this, it is about the day-to-day struggle more of being in this reform school, but it does it in a way that it doesn't feel like it's a difficult watch, like we were talking about some documentaries being a difficult watch. And there's that with the camera work. There's some really innovative cuts as well. There's a moment I don't want to give away, but at the end, I've heard a few people talk about this. It oddly reminded me of a video game, but it does something. It's got a very emotional pull to it in this sequence. I think it's probably just under 2 hours, but it's probably the best film I've seen in the recent batch of stuff. I think it's got a couple of Oscar nominations, but not loads. but I really enjoyed it. Everybody I know who's seen it has enjoyed it, but it's had a very limited release here. It's been very difficult to find. It's an Amazon Studios production though, so it will probably be on Prime for long. But it's definitely worth the watch, and it's not as traumatic a viewing as the premise of it sounds. It's a much more hopeful film than that. So that's Nickel Boys.
Nickel Boys, thank you. Okay, well, thanks, James. Great recommendation there. Right, well, thanks. I use your host. That's quite a good run through of January there as releases. So I'll thank Richard, Andrew, James, and Alfonso. Thank you for this week's releases and month's releases, and join us next time for when we do this all over again. And for you, wherever you're listening, see you next time.
We hope you enjoyed this film and TV review.com episode. Catch the latest film and TV reviews, together with regular episode content from the world of film and TV every week. See you soon. Would you like to reach our film and TV review podcast audience? Do you have a product or service of interest to film and TV home consumers or followers of the entertainment industry? Have a film or show production to publicize? For affordable price plans for all budgets, get in touch and find out about our introductory advertising options. Reach our audience of film and TV viewers and visit our site contact page at filmandtvreview.com, or you can email us at business@filmandtvreview.com. Reach out today.